I'd ask you to do is be very careful climbing on and off the engine, okay? And don't touch any of the controls on there. I'll explain as best I can everything to you, but I'll let each of you sit down in the seat there, and we'll take a look and let you toot the whistle or whatever.
That's the first thing he said
okay.
he wanted to do. So
all right.
You want to go up?
Let's go take a look at it. Yeah,
you want to?
I get my backside on video. I got to sit in the seat too.
Okay, now we can't stand in the middle.
Where's the ice box?
I think it's back on the far end now. Should be.
And only we used to have a coal stove, and we had a little what we call a crow's nest just underneath this here little place where we could build just a little fire, you know, and cook real fast. And time you'd be out on the road for 24 hours or so, it's 36 hours, and you slept in here, you cooked here, and you were running down the road and doing work and everything else. And this place sometimes would get just a little bit crummy.
Just a little bit.
That's where you did your feather bedding, Grandpa?
In fact, one of the beds that's in the carport was a caboose mattress that I had for years. Now, one of those mattresses out there is one that I had for years. It's about 4 inches shorter than the regular bed mattress. I had to have it made special because the regular bed mattress just wouldn't quite go in these beds. And me being 6'1", you can imagine how I got along.
We used to. Every conductor, assigned conductor, had his own caboose. When you became a conductor or promoted conductor and you were assigned to a turn, you had your own caboose. And it was up to you to decide whether or not the brakeman got to stay on the caboose. If a conductor said that a guy, you know, he didn't bathe proper or regular or he didn't do the work, the conductor would boot him off the caboose, and it was up to the man to find. He had to find a job. He had to find a conductor who would take him, and go from there with it. You know, a conductor that he could hold seniority with, and they'd hire another man out to take his place. And every time the train would come in, we'd cut the cabooses off. We'd, like, Mr. Trent, if your caboose would come in, we'd cut your caboose away, right?
Yeah.
Take your caboose, and they take it down here about, well, where we first started. There's an old track in there, and it's called the cab track. And we'd stick his caboose in the cab track, and take the next caboose for an eastbound train, for example, and stick that caboose on, and that conductor and his crew were called, and they went. And that was their caboose, and they went with their caboose. And then you could tell how many times out you were by looking at the caboose track and seeing where your caboose was in the caboose track. If it was 4 times out, you know, 4 times deep in the track, then you knew that they were going to run 4 more trains before it was your turn to go. So that's basically how a lot of the guys would tell you how many times out they were.
You were talking about the cab track being up there.
Right, right.
It was up there on the right-hand side, and then they moved it down here for a little while.
Right.
And, but anyway, what he was telling you is just exactly the way it worked. And we had these cabooses all painted up and fixed up for ourselves. And then eventually, just about time I was holding a regular caboose, why, 0547, why, then they took the cabooses away from us and provided places in the Harvey houses, stuff on the end of the line for us to stay in. And so I had very little time on the caboose where I was the conductor, the head E. But you two all worked there at that table, and I said we cooked and we did everything on here, and we would I broke for old John Purdy for about 5 years with two regular breaks. Roy Adams, you knew Roy Adams. Now up here, we always, when I was on the caboose, why regular, we had two brakemen. The one was a brakeman, one was a flagman, and the conductor. All three of us rode back here on the train, and we would sit up there in that seat up there when the train was moving. Whenever the train was moving, there was always one or two men in that cupola all the time, and watching the curves, watching the train as it went around every curve.
Why?
And we were looking for
smoke
or dust or,
yeah.
or some lumber unloading or
hot box.
Or hot box smoke would usually be brakes or hot box, and we were looking for trouble, and that was exactly it. We were looking for trouble. Whenever we saw something, we stopped and at first we used to have to pull the air, but then we got the radios. Cliff, you'll understand this. On the air, he showed you up there how he set the air to set the brakes on the train. Well, what he would do, this is just exactly opposite from a truck air brakes. A truck air brakes, you pump the pressure on. You have the compressor and you pump it up from 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 20 pounds of pressure against the brake drum. And on this, you pump them off. You have a reserve auxiliary tanks on every car and on the engine that you have a high pressure up there. You pump the brakes off, and then whenever that train line breaks, see it's coupled together from one car to the next. Whenever that train line breaks, or whenever the pressure is decreased in that train line, you have to have 80 pounds of pressure to have your brakes full release. And then whenever that got decreased for any reason, if the train broke in two, or one of those hoses broke, or anything that happened, why then those auxiliary tanks would just throw the pressure right against those brake drums and you'd be stopped. So it's just exactly the opposite from a diesel truck.
Tell the kids what a hot box was and how you took care of hot boxes.
Well, I can show you outside better than that. And in here. Those of you that want to go up there and take a look out of there, come on out of there, Chuck. You're not hired to run this train. Come on. Come on down.
That way if you fall, you bust your chin.
As opposed to.
Just get up.
And what do they do up there?
Back here for hours.
That's where you watch the train. Anytime the train's moving,
Nice, kick
you're
back.
2 minutes up there.
Put that Pepsi in.
Nowadays, there's only one. And a lot of trains that don't even have it.
Is this juice?
A dog is one that's going to just drag itself across the territory. It won't be what we call a shooter. A shooter is a hot 70-mile-an-hour train. A dog is one that you're lucky if you go 30 miles an hour on it.
And you stop everywhere to do work.
Yeah, it's stop everywhere.
I want to go.
You want to go on the dog? Yeah?
I don't think so.
Well,
I want to ride the red tape.
we'll wait till we get Bear home and then we'll let you ride the dog. We've got a couple of big we've got a couple of big bouvier dogs. That's kind of
I'm outside the church.
All right. That's about it. Now face the equipment.
Come on, Marsh.
Running smile.
Mom, you can talk about the hot dogs out here.
Track, and they're placed so many, you know, about a half a mile from the train that you're protecting. If a train comes up behind you, he hits these, and they're called guns, and they go off, and the engineer can hear them. And when he hits the guns, he has to stop.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
The train was pulling this way. I took there with my suitcase and every lunch, lantern, and everything else that I had right here. And if you got on over 10 miles an hour, you're asking for trouble because you can throw you a lot of times. But up to 5 miles an hour would be fine. And you'd hit this, kick this foot in the air, and the train coming by would catch you and just throw all your stuff up in there, and the forward motion of the train, you learned how to just let the train pick you up. It just swing you right up. That's the reason my right shoulder is the doctor
Bursitis.
he told me it's worn out.
Yeah. And
Catching-
always got on
catching
or off.
trains.
On which end?
On the trailing end.
There you go.
Always.
The reason being, if you slipped, where was the train going? The other way. See, and you ended up in a pile down here, and everyone laughed at you, but at least you didn't get run over.
Oh man.
Now these are journal boxes. Now these have roller bearings in them, this type. But like any roller, any bearing, it'll get hot. And we could never fix these. We'd have to just set this car out or limp it into town somewhere. But we used to have a regular old journal box. The journal is for the part that sticks out like this. It's just a shaft comes out here from there, and we had the brasses set on top of it. There's a brass bearing, and then the weight of this train, the frame and everything, was right down on that brass bearing. And we had packing underneath it, plain old wool-like packing, and underneath it, and we had oil cans that we could fill them. We had jacks that we'd jack the thing up, put a new brass in, and be on our way. Sometimes that'd work, and sometimes the journal was so rough that we wouldn't get very far. And I'd even put a little sand in there to smooth that journal out. So, but anyway, we learned to work with them. We'd take them in if it was at all possible. We'd take them in.
Were you ever late?
Ever late?
No, you didn't get on the train.
That's not in any railman's vocabulary.
Late, never late.
So hot box, when that journal would get hot, friction from turning it just get hot, just like on electric motor. You know, you've got a little bearing in there. It'll get hot.
How could you see that from the train?
The smoke. Smoke.
And if it was on the caboose, the smell would come in that dirty old, the saddest smell that you ever smelled. Anytime we smelled that, we'd say, oh.
Yeah. If you had to set your caboose out, you were in big trouble. See, that's.
Yeah.
We never set them out. We'd limp them in.
You figure it in somehow, yeah.
You find some way.
But you can see,
Motivation.
this is called a truck, believe it or not. Okay? And the side frame, which is this piece here, it's all just sort of, it sits on there by weight. Everything just basically, you could jack this engine or this caboose up, and it would come apart right here. Well, it wouldn't now because the keepers are in down here, but you'd lift it right up off the wheels and leave the wheels sitting there with the keepers in. Underneath there's a pivot and a pin, and that's all that it sits on. It just rides on a pivot, on a pin under there, and you can just pick this, and the whole body would just lift right off the truck. And that's what happens in a derailment. Those trucks and everything just go everywhere. And when they do, then we put them all back together again and set it right back on there if we can, if it hasn't tore it up too bad.
Get the wrecker out there and pick up the trucks and set them over on the rail, and then pick up the car. A lot of times roll the car off and in the weeds and burn it.
Yep. Or bury it. We used to do that. We don't anymore. They pick up everything anymore.
They pick up everything.
Everything.
Boy, I buried nine cars over this side of Challenger one time.
Is that right?
On a record.
How do you bury it?
Dig a big hole and bury it.
With shovels, as in manpower?
No, bulldozers.
Bulldozers.
And
I was going to say, you'd be out there still digging those holes.
One night over this side of the chamber. Well, I'll tell these stories later.
Okay.
But we sure do appreciate your taking the time. Might have had to switch out an engine because one of them broke down. Something was trouble with one of them. Put another engine this way.
Back and forth. What'd you do?
Where's the dispatcher, engine dispatcher work out of now?
The crew office is downstairs
Oh, not gas at all.
in the